So I know you just mentioned it was a big topic last week. Actually, we were talking about it, and that one guy obviously was Dan Shaughnessy. So I'm just curious, you always have a good relationship with Dan during the year? I mean, your career, or was there ever an issue with him?
It's funny that you asked me that question because you know the exactly answer about that.
Yeah, I do. I just thought I'd like to hear you.
You know Dan Shaughnessy has been an ass to everybody. So what can I tell you? I mean, it's not a surprise for me. It's not a surprise for y'all. He didn't vote for me. So what can I do? I mean, seriously, you know what I'm saying? That's not going to stop anything. It's just one guy that didn't vote for you, and nothing you can do about it. But I mean, it's a guy that he just like giving hard time to everyone. So.
Second hour of WEEI, late night with KJ, 617-779-7937, the Harbor One hotline or the text line 37937. That's Big Papi on Maloney and Fourier earlier, talking about his thoughts on Dan Shaughnessy and this whole Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voting. It's a shame. So I went back and looked to see what happened last year, because last year nobody got in. It's just like, oh. So Papi's up this year. A-Rod is up this year. And the big story is this is the last year that Schilling, Bonds, and Clemens can get in. And this is why I say baseball is literally watching the greatest sport dance the night away into oblivion because of idiots like Shaughnessy. Now, I don't know him personally, but you know what they are.
Bunch of damn nerds.
Thank you.
Nerds!
Nerds! Nerds!
Nerds!
Shaughnessy's only vote last year was for Jeff Kent. And when you see something like that, you're like, okay, so are you trying to wield some of your nerd power because you knew that one of the more infamous dugout blowups happened between Barry Bonds and Jeff Kent? Now, don't get me wrong. Jeff Kent is a Hall of Fame type player, but here's the great thing about when you play second base in the major leagues throughout the course of your career. Hell, if you hit over 120 home runs, they're going to be calling. Second base, it's like Honus Wagner, Joe Morgan, is Dave Concepcion, did he get in? It's because the second baseman traditionally does not hit. But you purposely went out of your way to only vote for Jeff Kent. That's what you are. This is who they are. A bunch of nerds.
Bunch of damn nerds. Nerds!
That's the problem. You know, on Twitter, and I sometimes tickle the fancy up there when I see something pop up. Someone literally had an argument with me, and I don't know why I argue, but when they said this, I was just like, wow, people need to get away from the desktop computers tweeting. Someone tried to tell me that Bobby Grich was a better player than Ryan Sandberg, just based on numbers. What are they?
Bunch of damn nerds. Nerds!
Do any of these writers I think it should be mandatory that these writers sit down in a room and watch the original Bad News Bears, the last 30 minutes. They don't even have to watch the whole movie. Watch the last 30 minutes and understand how the game works. Why he asked the kid to be hit by the pitch. How he's trying to get the lineup down to Kelly and to Tatum O'Neal because he knows he'll be able to drive in runs. While Ahmed bunts the ball because Ahmed has not been hitting the ball all year, but he needed to get on base. The emotions from the game are being stripped. If I was Papi, I would feel the same way because at the end of the day, you're going to start talking about putting in relief pitchers who couldn't even just because they played 10 years. So I looked at some of the other votes. Here's a guy named Mike Walder. His only vote last year was for Omar Vizquel. What are they?
Bunch of damn nerds.
How about Randy Miller, who says Vasquez, Vasquez, and Wagner? What are they?
Nerds!
Now, David Lemon, I give him credit. His only two votes were for Bonds and Clemens. I mean, that makes sense. But then you've got people who sit here and say, like Bob Baum, Troy Hudson, Scott Rowling, Schilling, and Wagner. What are they?
Bunch of damn nerds.
Oh, Kirby Arnold. This is sweet. Todd Helton, Andrew Jones, Jeff Kent, Scott Rowling, Schilling, and Wagner. What are these writers?
Nerds!
Oh, this is a sweet one. Mel Antonin, Burley, Helton, Hudson, Hunter, Jones, Kent, Rowland, Vesquell, Wagner. What are these writers?
Bunch of damn nerds. Nerds!
You're killing a sport. Piece by piece by piece.
While constantly saying that they are trying to grow the game, which is the most frustrating part.
You remember the slogan where Glavin and Maddox were in the commercial say, chicks dig the long ball? This is when the nerds showed up and said, we're going to start taking over with our numbers. We're going to take over the sport. We're going to give you a bunch of numbers. Now, look, I have a minor that included how statistics work. And the first thing I tell you is you cannot count all the variables. You couldn't. Like if you say just something basic as what they hit versus left-handed versus who they hit against right-handed. Okay, my question would be is, all right, who did they hit behind when they hit left-handed, and was it different than who they had hit behind when they were right-handed against the right-hander? Did you take that into account? No, but what are they?
Bunch of damn nerds. Nerds!
I love that scene in Revenge of the Nerds. Because then they all get the pies together to trick the nerds. But see, with baseball, no pies have come for these nerds. None. To get it to the point where Bonds and Clemens... Here's another thing that I saw someone mention when in this conversation where someone was trying to tell me that Bobby Grich was better than Ryan Sandberg. And I had to remind him, hello, I never saw them pitching around Bobby Grich. He said, well, I've never seen it around Ozzie Smith. I was like, you dummy. Ozzie Smith hit a game-clinching home run in the 85 NLCS. But what are they?
Bunch of damn nerds.
Unbelievable. So the WAR conversation, it just boggles my mind. Well, do you know why players get replaced? I said to him, well, what do you think Barry Bonds' WAR is? And I don't look it up because I'll tell you what it is. It's 30 years. Pittsburgh has not recovered. I don't care what position or what player you put out there. The Pittsburgh Pirates have not recovered since 1992. But what are these guys that are telling me all about baseball?
Nerds!
Yeah, try that on for WAR. They say, well, you don't understand replacement. Yeah, I understand how a franchise has not been the same since a guy left. Yeah, you still haven't replaced him. Again, all these variables that take you away from the element and the dirt of the game is why chicks don't dig the long ball or don't even watch the ball game at all. And now here you are playing games with, oh, does Papi get in or not? Or does Bonds get in or not? Oh, now the thing with Schilling, it's a little more personal than it is professional. And I could argue that maybe the holdup on Schilling is some of those years in Philadelphia where the teams weren't good. He was striking out everybody, and so was the rest of the team. I think if Schilling played 2 more good years in Boston, he would be a shoo-in. He would already be in, despite what you may personally think of him.
And you might hate the WAR stat, but guess who he sits right above all-time WAR?
Who?
Joe DiMaggio. And he's directly below Pete Rose, who's not allowed in the Hall of Fame because he did a thing that people do on the regular now, which is bet on games.
Yeah. Pete was a little ahead of his time for the wrong reasons.
A pioneer, KJ.
Well, the thing with Pete Rose was the gambling was the straw that broke the camel's back. There were so many underlying issues that were going on with Pete Rose that they were just like, this is the thing that we could get rid of him for. But when you start getting into these, because now we're looking at bad pitching, like it's amazing. I came up at the time where you started to hear the argument from some of the people before with expansion is going to ruin the game. You know, going up against pitchers who play for the San Diego Padres is only going to dilute stats and make them less valuable as they were and adding, the extra games that's going to do something to the game. That's something different, right? Because at the end of the day now, anybody can go get any prospect they want. In terms of that whole expansion argument, the Padres got to the World Series in '84 sooner than most franchises did. The Astros were really good into the 70s. So it didn't take them long. The Expos were on fire in the late 70s, early 80s. And they had only been around since 70. If you want a fun fact, the very first catcher ever drafted by the Montreal Expos went to high school with my mom. Okay, yeah. For those who are listening in our Francophone countries. But come on, guys. If you're literally going to tinker around, or you're going to be like Shaughnessy and say, I'm going to just vote Jeff Kent. And did you see when him and Bonds, I'm not going to vote in Bonds. You know what that is? You know what they are?
Bunch of damn nerds. Nerds!
617-779-7937 or the text line 37937. Matt, I feel like I've in a cathartic way, and I've made that word up just quickly.
You catharted it out.
Yes, catharted it out.
Yeah.
Yes, that I had to get that out because here's a game that I love, played, understand from the rooter to the tutor, and then what fascinates me is the god of stats and sabermetrics is Billy Beane, who only had 300 appearances in the league. It's this is not some grandiose thing. And sabermetrics, who's the father of that, was a guy who was stolen on. He was a catcher, and if I remember the story correctly, he gave up 11 stolen bases in one game and quit the game the very next day.
Well, that's why they become nerds, because they couldn't hack it.
Hit that John Goodman one more time for me.
Bunch of damn nerds.
Billy Beane.
Nerds!
All those guys.
Bill James.
Those are your leaders. That's the guy's name. Bill James. This is who's going to dictate and determine why they get in. Scott, Rowland, let's get rid of a couple of things right here. Kill me with the BS that, hey, they made 10 All-Star games. There's a guy named Mike Sweeney who played for the Royals every year who was hard. The teams were horrible, but guess what? He's an 8-time All-Star. Every team, no matter how bad they are, sends an all-star representative. That is more dilutive to anything than expansion or, don't put the DH in both leagues. We don't want to see people hit. Unbelievable. And then this win against replacement thing. Man, there's a term that starts with miss me with that. I'm not going to say the rest of it because I know it's the blue hours, but I'm not trying to go that dark. But miss me with that bull. Over the replacement, so you're in the GM's office and know why they've decided to go with somebody else? You haven't factored in the cost of attendance or attendance up and down and stuff these are all variables that you have to factor in on the replacement. Hell, I still remember when the Mets got rid of Kevin Mitchell and sent him to San Diego. Kevin Mitchell will end up becoming he became the league MVP 4 years later. He replaced Kevin McReynolds. I don't think he passed Kevin McReynolds on the RAR for his 5 seconds that he was there in San Diego. And Kevin McReynolds did not replace the RAR or whatever when he came to the Mets at that time. Watch the last 30 minutes of Bad News Bears. Nerds.
Nerds!
Time to trend.
Gresh and Keith, weekdays 10 to 2.
Now here's what's trending on WEEI.